All right, greetings, Freedom Phil. Just for the record and some thoughts of sorts, the answer to why I'm a nomadic person. I outright own a house. It's right here. We're just about completely finished with doing a remodel, turn it into a rental. And even though it's a nice house, why is it I don't want to just settle down, you know, put down roots? Well, I'm going to answer that. Like it's described. Let's get into it. When I was a really little kid, I lived in this town called St. Anthony. And for whatever reason, I just hated wearing my shoes. Maybe it was the having to learn to tie my knots. I don't know. I used to walk barefoot all over town during the summer. Why? Because I could. And I'd walk by on the other side of town. I'd walk over and I'd find the railroad tracks and the overpass that kind of went over this highway that's basically a freeway. And I'd look at those big trucks, and who knows, maybe it was Transformers, Optimus Prime, who knows. I'd look at that and I'd be like, look at that truck. It's big, it's huge, it's going somewhere. I didn't know where it was going. I always wondered that as a little kid. Maybe with the trains, it was the same thing. The horizon, somewhere else. We moved over to Washington, late 80s, 88, 89, something like that. It was 89, somewhere in that range. And moved to Forks. And as a little kid living there, I was kind of stuck with my brother. Oh, go make sure your brother, keep an eye on your little brother. I don't want to. We used to go down to Mill Creek and all these other places and whatnot. I remember looking at this farmer's house down this long way. I used to walk to school occasionally too. Or if you get in trouble, I just walk home. It was that time of America where everybody was uptight and worried about everything. The town, I don't know if it's still this way, but you can smell the cedar smoke wafting from the shake mills where the leftovers, they burn it in the burner, and the whole town smelled like beautiful cedar smoke. And it was such an adventure. And I remember coming back years later as an adult just to see it. I'm like, I haven't been out there in God knows how long. And just looking at how small everything seemed. And it was kind of a weird little adventure. I was camped out at Tom Creek with my friends, and I rode into town, motorcycle, go shopping, get a little bit of stuff. Hung out by the Bogosho River near the boat launch, near the hatchery. And it's the adventure of somewhere else and not coming back. Which, that same mentality when I was a kid in Port Angeles. And the funny thing about it is like, look, I've always been a little different from people. I've always been intellectually curious. Kind of not really confrontational, but I like a good and gripping conversation. And most people are just go along to get along. You get your local groups of people. You get your dudes that are like, the pecking order. And I could never accept the whole pecking order mentality. My outlook was, if somebody's going to lord over me, well, they better prove why they're better than me. First, prove it. And then okay, well, you've established yourself. So I was kind of an outcast of sorts. And so when I get back to thinking about it, I had video games. I had a few friends. I had like walking around, dicking around, hanging out with my buddies. But one of the highlights of my childhood was when we go on vacation. We had these family reunions that generally happened in Oregon. Sometimes we'd go over to Idaho to visit that side of the family that we had left behind. I'd see places like the Crater Lake, or in Idaho, Craters of the Moon. I'd see mountain ranges. I remember one year, I don't remember where we were, I think we were going through southeast Oregon, going from Klamath Falls-ish over to Idaho. And I never saw so many jackrabbits in my life, dead jackrabbits. It was one of those years where they just had a bloom and they were everywhere. I think it's one of those times we kind of wiggled our way past Burns and something. We probably ended up on the Highway 20 because I think I remembered this gas station that we had stopped at. I just remember this. It was in the middle of nowhere. It was a box, and we were driving by a number of times, driving truck. I'm like, I think I know that place. But it was the adventure of it. Fort Stevens, Oregon, Medford, Oregon for the Jackson Rose Gardens, you know, Lithia Park in Ashland, Shakespeare. All the really cool things were always somewhere else. All the drab and frankly boring judgmental BS that I ever dealt with was always back home. It wasn't, my family was 50-50. I mean, Nancy was rather emotionally vacant, if we're being honest about it. She would have made a great sea turtle. But I look at it and I think to myself, the whole thing, the seeds were there, but they didn't really blossom until I got a bit older. I always wanted to drive truck. And you know what? It kind of held me back from that was all the people that told me, oh, truck driving, those guys, they lose their shirts. They don't make much money. And you know the people that told me that the most? Were all the people that failed. Or people that would look at it like, that's a dirty industry. That's this and that. You know, so I wasn't doing that. But when I lived in the woods, I was kind of doing it by my own terms, and I'd go hiking and I go see things. And I remember when I got my '93 Ford Escort, it had the motor that got 35 miles to the gallon. I just did a random trip one time down to Long Beach, Washington, for no reason. Should probably do a story about that. But I met this homeless guy, and he's like, we were just talking. He's like, hey, you want to eat steak? I'm like, I can't afford that. He's like, no, we can eat steak. He literally grabbed the steak, packed, and shoved him in his shirt, his pants, or whatever. I can't remember. Just shoved him in his clothes, and we went out like to the beach, a couple beers and whatnot, and we just cooked him up. We hung out there for a while. Eventually, he kind of started catching some Z's, and I was like, oh, I gotta go. I took off. For all I know, I'm like, hey, maybe that was my dad. I always like that joke. It's a Dennis the Menace movie joke. I remember my sister looked at the homeless guy. Hey, there's Dad. I'm like, really? No. But just that, like, I was here in my normal life up here, and now I'm way the fuck somewhere else. People don't know me. I don't know what's happening here. Maybe I get online and look up and say, hey, there's a crab festival. There's a jazz and crab festival this weird time of the year. Fuck it. Let's go and do it. Or, hey, I remember that lake, like Wickiup Reservoir from when you were a little kid and how beautiful it was, North and South Twin Lakes, how warm and hot it was. Why don't we go there? And I look at that and that wanderlust never stopped. Once I got a taste of it, I was like, dude, fuck yeah. The trip, the experience, the movement, that's what it's about for me. And don't get me wrong when I say this. Every day, and sometimes this maybe explains why when I'm working on my house, it's such a fucking drag. Because I feel like every day that I'm pounding or swinging a hammer here, and I should put more work into it, more effort, but sometimes I'm just bored to death, bored out. Every day that I spend here, it's one more day that I'm not living somewhere else. Just really experiencing it, feeling it. Even if I'm just hanging out, in a lawn chair in the middle of nowhere in the void, watching some golden eagles fly by and cows walking through the brush to make it to the river. At least I'm there. I'm really experiencing something. I'm seeing something. I go up to the hills. I see that. I go to the coast. I see that. And I love van life. I love trucking life. I really do. I love trucking. They pay me to do what I naturally love doing. I don't like working, and trucking doesn't seem like work to me. I tell people all the time, oh, it's really hard work. No, it's just long work. Trucking is not hard work. You just sit there. Sit there and listen to your favorite podcast as you travel. They give you a target. We need this load taken from here, like Great American Snack, down to someplace in, I don't know, Phoenix or Dallas or wherever. And then you get a load going somewhere else. Like say it's middle winter where you're at up north, you go south. You get a load up down there, then you get a load that's maybe 3 hop loads on the way back. Maybe you get a load that takes you all the way up towards, you go up north towards Chicago area, you pick up a load, and then you do three loads. One drops over near, what was it, Cheyenne, then another goes up to Billings, and then the last one on like one more in Spokane, and one more over in Everett, Washington. Going through all this territory. And sometimes during the right time of year around there, when the early snow happens, but there's still some golden leaves on the aspens or the cottonwoods, you look out there and it's like one of those Norman Rockwell paintings. It's just so beautiful. We're standing up on top of one of those passes up there. You're an old abandoned railroad. Smell of the juniper and the pines. I've really experienced life. I know it doesn't seem like much to a lot of people, but I've been all over the country. I've enjoyed it. And the idea of just sitting around, like you work your job, you go home, you eat some food, maybe you bang your girlfriend, and then you go to sleep and do it again. And on the weekend, you get to have some fun. I just view that as a giant cosmic waste of my life. Now, for you, regular individual folk that, you've got your routine and that's your life. If you're happy, right on, right on. Roll with it. You're happy. But for me, there's always the endless horizon. And that's where I look at it in the long run. And I'm like, I love van life. But the kind of joke would be Prius with a big tent, 50 something miles to the gallon. I could, if I was bumming change, I could be like, I only need $10 to go 300 miles. It's a joke, actually, what that would be. These days with these gas prices, let's see, about 50 miles to the gallon. What is that? About $20? You get my point, though. I could literally go everywhere on fumes. I could spend, I could spend a couple weeks or so in this part of the wasteland, and then like, oh, it's getting a little too hot, I get a little too cold, just go somewhere else. And that I really could see that being me when I get old. Have like a gym membership for whatever brand of showers, pack some water with me, be like, well, we're here now, and we're just going to take a bath next to my car. And people are like, well, what type of life is that? And you're like, what if you have a medical emergency? I guess I'll be dead. But I don't know, man. I mean, maybe when I get super old, maybe I'll settle down, live in this place, or I'll live in my property over in Washington, build a little tiny home. Become one of those fixtures of the town or the local HOA out there. I will do my walk with my corgi or two or husky or whatever, and I wave at people, and I go to the library. I do that, basically go to the senior center just to prove I'm not dead. Leave a few posts online. I don't even really like social media, but sometimes I think people are really just leaving posts. Not dead. That should say. It should say ND at the top. Not dead. And this happened. But before I get to that point in my life, I want to live as much as I goddamn can, because there ain't nothing generally wherever I've been from that's worth really sticking around for. There's the fun times, there's when the flowers bloom, and after the flowers are done blooming, then it's another goddamn 8 to 9 months before the flowers bloom again. Fuck it. I want to spend those other 8, 9 months enjoying some flowers somewhere else. Enjoy your flowers while you're alive. Freedom Phil, take it easy. That's just for the record.